Hello, welcome back to my channel. And welcome to the start of an individual reading vlog in which I will be reading Empire of Storms. Very excited to be reading this book. I've just been in a fantasy mood. The ugly weather in Texas has been making me want to just sit in bed with my cats and read fantasy books, and frankly, I am not mad about it in the slightest. So today I'm just going to be reading Empire of Storms. It's going to be a really casual, chatty reading vlog, as the other videos in the series have been thus far. It's been a while since I've made videos on these books. I think my Queen of Shadows vlog was posted 4 or 5 months ago at this point, but I'm excited to finish off the series, hopefully before the year is over. But before we get into the vlog portion of this video, I wanted to take a second to tell you a little bit about today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of online classes, and it's a platform that a lot of my friends have been using over the years to kind of like level up their skills, and I figured it was finally time to try it myself since I have some pretty big goals going into 2023. One of those skills that I'm looking to level up going into 2023 are my photography skills. I'd really like to be posting on Instagram more often, but I felt kind of insecure about the fact that I am really not good at using my DSLR camera, so I took the Fundamentals of DSLR Photography class with Justin Bridges, and already I have such a better understanding of the exposure triangle. I feel like I had like a semi-basic understanding of DSLR photography before watching these videos, but honestly understanding the why behind the various legs of the triangle was something that I didn't know that I needed. I also love the way that Skillshare classes are formatted on the website too. It's super easy to go back to a lesson if you want to refresh yourself on a certain topic, and it allows you to go at your own pace as you learn if you're not someone who has a ton of time all at once to kind of sit down and watch a course. And I feel like my skills are already getting better going into 2023. Here's a picture that I took after taking that Fundamentals of DSLR class. I honestly think I'm probably going to take more classes with this instructor in the future because frankly, I feel like my skills have already been leveling up. I'm excited to kind of like dive into the other classes on Skillshare that aren't photography related. There are a couple of courses on Procreate that I'm really interested in. That's probably what I'm going to be going through next. Another one of the skills that I'm trying to level up for next year is better thumbnails. I feel like my thumbnails have been kind of lacking lately, and I know that Skillshare has a ton of classes, not only on like YouTube content, I mean, there's just a whole host of classes on Skillshare, no matter what your interests are. And something that I really love about Skillshare, especially going into the holiday season, is that this is a gift that you can either give yourself or someone in your life. It doesn't add clutter to your life, but instead fuels your passions and your curiosities. Make 2022 the year that you perfect a creative hobby, land a new career, or launch your business. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare to try it out for yourself. Thanks again to Skillshare for sponsoring this portion of today's video. So I'm back in the world of Throne of Glass, and I can't decide if this book starts out with a whimper or a bang. Certainly, I would say a mixture of both. We've had 3 separate POVs, and we definitely know what direction the story is headed in at this point, which I appreciate. Sarah Jane is not pulling any punches. She's letting you know, hey, stuff's about to hit the fan, and we're gonna make sure that you're here along for the ride. So first up, we have a pretty interesting introduction, and I will say, if you're not 100% tuned in and paying attention, you might miss the fact that this is about Elena and not Selena. Elena is the dead queen who has kind of been giving Selena/Aelin advice throughout the story in the form of her ghostiness, and we get to see kind of what she was dealing with back in the day. I feel like, and I could be wrong here, I didn't really understand the point of Elena and also like how she tied back into Selena/Aelin's heritage, but I'm very much understanding it now. Essentially, Elena was a queen, princess, whatever, of Terrasen. She and her main dude, Gavin, the guy who is in charge of the army at the time back in the day, they are in the midst of a battle, and they are fighting Rowan, not the grocery store, but the evil Valg king, who is like one of the 3 remaining kings, and he is trying, I guess, to take over the known world and just kind of like kill everybody. So they're kind of facing this impossible battle, and they're trying to decide what to do, and I think what we find out is that they find a way to take down Rowan, and not forever, but enough to where someone generations later can solve this problem, which is kind of where we're at in the present day. And I like that introduction. I feel like it was a smart introduction into the story because I think it kind of grounds you back into this world, and I think kind of refreshes your memory, even though it is a new point of view and isn't just like a retread of things that we have gotten in previous books. So I can appreciate that narrative choice there. But then we get into the actual POVs of the story, which I'm not mad at, okay? So first up, we have Elide. She's a character that I don't totally love. Maybe I will love more as the story goes on, but she's kind of running through the forest at this point. She is sent by, I can't remember if it's Kaltain or Manon, to go to Terrasen and talk to Selena/Aelin and give her a word key, I believe it is. Kaltain cuts it out of her own arm, gives it to Elide, and is like, hey, will you take this to my girl up north? Elide's like, yeah, I guess so. She's running as fast as she can on her injured leg. She finds that she's actually being followed by someone, and that someone is Lorcan. Lorcan is trying to run from the witches who are on
the hunt for him. He ended up killing some witches because he was trying to figure out what's like going on. Like, what is going on? He is a Fae prince, and he's like, you know what's going on? I'm supposed to be doing like a little bit of reconnaissance work for the queen, and by doing so, he ends up capturing a witch and then like murdering her in cold blood. Which, you know, I'm not sure that was the best choice, my dude. And now he's being obviously hunted down by witches, and I don't know, he's like intrigued by this human who has witch blood in her. He's gonna capture her, but like also it's gonna be sort of like romantic. I don't really remember the details. I just do know that they end up in a romantic relationship together, which I don't know, intrigued, interested. I think it will be a nice relief from the more boring parts of the story, which we're getting to, but not right now. An interesting part of the story is Manon. So Manon has finally met Rowan. Her and some of the witches are being asked to go back to Riftold and basically break down the city, take down Dorian and everybody in the city so that there are going to be no allies for Selena up in the north. Manon is not instructed to kill Dorian. She's supposed to bring Dorian back to Rowan, who I believe is in Morath, which I mean, honestly, we should just call it Mordor at this point. That's exactly how I picture it, just like a big pit of doom and fire. But she is supposed to bring back Dorian to this place, and obviously like her and the 13 are supposed to like really tear up Rifthold, but like not murder everybody. And that's actually kind of a suggestion she makes to Rowan. He's fully like take down the city at all costs, because Manon owes a life debt to Aelin, and like I don't think necessarily wants to see Aelin fail in her mission. You know, she suggests to Rowan like, hey, maybe murdering everybody in the city is not a great idea, especially since there are other kingdoms, right? And even though those kingdoms are weak, eventually if we take down Rifthold, right, and like Dorian's dead, whatever, there might be some people who want to take over Rifthold and fight against you and team up with Selena. But if we decide not to do that and instead have the king on our side, the king being Dorian, I think we stand a better chance at like taking over the world together. And so he's like, yeah, okay, sure, that sounds good. And so she's gonna go and get Dorian and like make sure that he's not dead. And, yeah. I'm intrigued, I'm interested, and I'm curious to see where Manon's treachery leads her. It's very clear to me that she is not really down with Rowan. Like, even though she wants to just be left alone mostly, she wants to fight and then she wants to be left alone. She also wants to take down her grandmother, and like seeds of discontent, right? They're being sown. They're definitely being sown at this point. They were being planted in the last book and now they're being sown. Another thing that's being sown, which I find so funny, though not fascinating, I do find it funny. We get Aelin and kind of start to understand what's going on. So she has returned to Terrasen, right? She is going to take her rightful place as queen and get all of the remaining people in Terrasen no one seems to know about, because Aelin has done a good job at keeping the fact that like people actually live in Terrasen from the former king of Aelin. She's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go up north, I'm gonna get some people together, and then we're gonna fight against Rowan. She ends up meeting with 3 of the most important people in the kingdom who've kind of been in charge since she's been gone, and they're like, especially this one guy Darrow, they're like, well, here's the thing, you are not who we wanted you to be, right? We understand that you're the princess, but you were definitely not our queen. You have this court of people who are definitely ill-suited to be in your court. You have someone who has sworn a blood oath to you that is not your cousin, not someone of Terrasen, but a Fae prince who's probably going to betray us. We think you're making stupid decisions. Why would we want you to be our queen? You don't have any claim here. Aelin doesn't have any land here, so like basically just leave. And this came as a shock to me as a reader the first time I read this book. I remember just being kind of like, wow, okay, that's an interesting choice, but I like it because I feel like along the way in this book, Aelin doesn't really face many challenges, especially when it comes to challenges of intellect. I feel like a lot of the time if she has a challenge, it's like, oh, I have to kill people or I have to do something crafty, but very rarely does she actually have to answer for the fact that her personality's kind of and I appreciate that she is going to have to become a little bit more courtly, a little bit more formal, perhaps to take her rightful place as queen, which isn't to say that she needs to like abandon all of her friends or anything like that, but I like that she has to kind of play the politics game a little bit. Will it be interesting to read about that? I'm not certain, but I am liking the direction the story is headed in. I'm hoping that we maintain momentum and that there isn't like a long period where Selena is trying to, you know, gain support from some of the lower lords under Lord Darrow. We shall see. I mean, I don't know. I think part of the reason I put this down initially was because I was sort of bored the first time I read it, but I have just had a desire to read fantasy. I'm watching House of the Dragon right now, and I'm just like, I need to be in a fantasy world at this moment. Like, I desperately need to, and I can't justify, honestly, watching more TV at this point. I have so many books I need to read, so Empire of Storms it is. I'm gonna continue reading, and I'll let you know my thoughts as I do. All right, I'm like 120 pages in, and things are still moving at such a rapid pace, and honestly, I am grateful for it. I don't know why I thought that Aelin / Selena, I'm just gonna say Aelin from now on, right?
okay? I don't know why I assumed that Aelin would have to do a ton of court politicking. I mean, I guess she kind of is because she's having to recruit a lot of people to her side to sort of prove to Darrow that she is someone who can rule. But this is obviously sped up by the fact that Riftold is being attacked, and they find this out very last minute after the conversation with Darrow where he's like, you cannot be a queen of this country. A messenger runs in and is like, hey, Riftold is getting completely destroyed, or is going to be completely destroyed by the wyverns and by the witches. Everybody's a little bit terrified, and Darrow's like, you know, if you're able to bring back people to help us and fight this war, okay, sure, like maybe you can be queen. He's not thrilled at the prospect, obviously, but Aelin is very much ready to take on her duty and do what she has to do. In the meantime, Rowan is actually going to fly to Riftold to attempt to help Dorian, and stuff goes down, obviously, in Riftold. The cool thing is that Manon gets to really stand up for herself and do what she wants to do. She has a little bit of a moment with Dorian, which I was super into. She arrives to Riftold and obviously sees the Yellow Legs witches kind of taking over before her and the Blackbeak witches are able to. She knew and suspected that the Yellow Legs were going to try and like totally destroy Riftold and not actually listen to the instruction to actually like save Dorian. And so our girl, she takes things into her own hands and kills some Yellow Legs witches, which unfortunately has pretty dire consequences for her second Asterin. Manon has to go before her grandmother and the other two like witch council ladies and has to be like, hey, I did kill a Yellow Legs witch, but also she sort of deserved it. And while they do eventually side with her, they decide that bloodshed means more bloodshed, or like she has to answer for the blood that was shed. And so Asterin is unfortunately going to answer for this and die. And Manon not too happy with this, and I feel like I remember what happens at this point, or what is going to happen, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Very, very much looking forward to it. I won't spoil it at this point. I'll let you know when it happens. But things are definitely interesting. I'm excited to see too what happens with Dorian and Rowan. I think they have sailed off in a boat together, and they are going to go south and I think attempt to meet Aelin and form some sort of alliance and like find other people to end up fighting against Erewhon, right? And then we can't forget about Elide, whose story I think is still kind of interesting. She is finally, I don't want to say caught up to Lorcan, but Lorcan has kind of caught up to her, and they are being attacked by these beasts. And I'm pretty sure, no, I don't know for sure. For some reason, I assumed that these beasts and like creatures that are after them, the descendants or like the children, I guess you could say, of the impregnated witches. I don't think that's actually what they are, but they are coming to collect Elide for some reason. We don't really know why, but she's supposed to go back with them and hang out with Erewhon. Like, what does he want from her? Because she's only like partially a witch. I don't really get it. But Elide does some really crafty stuff to get out of that situation, and she basically claims to be a witch looking for Elide. And she ends up giving a fake name to Lorcan as well. She calls herself Marion or something like that, and I don't know if that is to like throw him off the scent as well about the fact that she is the person that those people are looking for. But we also kind of find out what Lorcan is supposed to be doing, which is going to Morath to find Erewhon and make sure that stuff doesn't go down, because the queen of the Fae is like, yeah, I don't really think the destruction of the world's like super cool, you know? It's not super cool and great. I don't really like interfering or anything, but like, you know, if you could interfere on my behalf, that would be pretty dope. And you know, Lorcan, he's gonna do this because that's like kind of his job. And I think if he found out that Elide was Elide, he would take her as like a bargaining chip to Erewhon or something. I don't know, I could be wrong here, but I think she's trying to keep her identity a secret. But Lorcan and Elide are teaming up, and they're gonna go to Terrasen, maybe? I don't exactly remember like where their chapter left off, but he's helping her with her injured or re-injured, I guess, leg, so that's pretty neat. Overall, things are moving. You know, we had that witchling, princeling moment, which I think that's definitely the highlight. We also, of course, had Rowan being like, you know, I'm gonna smang you into the next century. Next time I see you, girl, like, I know that I promised you that, like, whenever we got to an inn, I would take care of you, but obviously, like, I have to go get Dorian, and so, like, we'll do this another time. Sarah Janet with the slow burn once again, you know, not mad at it, but also, like, come on, girl, what are we waiting for? I don't want this to happen in a war camp like it did in the other book. I don't know. Just unnecessary, you know, just unnecessary. I feel like I've read so much of this book and I've read very little of it. Good news though is that I was able to get a copy on my Kindle, which has made the reading process so much nicer. As beautiful as this hardcover is, and as much as I love holding it up for you so I don't have to like edit in the dust jacket of the book, it's like not fun to hold this book in my hands. It's heavy. The pages are made out of like Bible paper, and I
can just flip on my little Kindle as quickly as possible. So I think my game plan is to get to, if I can, Lord willing, the 40 or 50% mark tonight of this book and update you tomorrow. That seems ambitious, not because I don't think I can read that much in the next like hour or two, but because I don't want to forget all the things that I'm reading before I talk to you again, but I'm gonna do my darndest. Maybe I'll take notes while I do it. I don't know. See you tomorrow. So I thought we could all use a change of scenery. I am in my living room and I am 40% into Empire of Storms. Frankly, I read the majority of that like up to 40% mark last night, and so I feel like my memory is not what it could be. However, I am enjoying this, I think. Dorian has been saved by Rowan. He is back in the islands. They got to the pirate islands, I guess, and they met up with Aelin and a bunch of other people, and the whole gang's back together essentially, trying to convince the pirate lord that he should put together some troops, put together a bit of an armada, and help everyone out. We also have the introduction, I guess you could say, of, is it Gavriel and Fenris? They're also Fae princes like Rowan, and they are still pledged to Maeve. What they're doing at this point is looking for Lorcan. I think it's interesting that Lorcan was like on a mission. Now I guess he's not in the good graces of the queen, so Fenris and Gavriel are in the pirate islands. I don't know what to call them. I'm gonna keep calling them the pirate islands, the southern islands. I'm not entirely sure. They're there and they get into contact with Rowan and Aelin and everybody, the whole gang, and she's, I think, trying to like convince them to team up with her and kind of abandon Queen Maeve, which isn't really possible because they have, I guess, pledged themselves to Maeve. We also find out a little bit about the parentage, I guess you could say, of Aelin. He ends up meeting his father in kind of an interesting way. I definitely didn't expect that to go down in the way that it did. I kind of expected there to be this like warm embrace and like, oh my god, daddy, I missed you so much. I like didn't know who you were, but like I'm so excited. No, that did not happen. I guess I probably should have expected that because there's no such thing as like a fun reunion in these books. These definitely have a lot less of a like friendshipy feel, I guess you could say, compared to A Court of Thorns and Roses. Like obviously there is a friendship circle. We've got Aedion, Lysandra, Rowan, Dorian, Aelin, like that whole gang. But I feel like there are tensions within that friend group, which actually I think makes it a little bit more realistic and perhaps interesting. But yeah, definitely different vibes altogether. We also have Manon, who is injured, I guess you could say. Oh my god, I forgot to tell you all of the crazy stuff that went down. Like I kind of implied, I kind of knew what was going to happen. So obviously Manon didn't end up killing her second Asterin. She ended up trying to kill her grandmother instead, and in doing so she found out that she is actually a Kraken witch herself. What? Scandalous. She is like a Kraken princess, I guess you could say, like the witches that all the other witches were hunting down. I think the Blackbeaks, generally speaking, were hunting down the Kraken witches. She finds out that she, I guess her dad was a Kraken witch. There were male witches at one point, which I believe is what Dorian is. I could be wrong here, but if his mom slept with a demon, he'd be a witch, right? Anyway, I think that checks out because I'm pretty sure that the witches are creations of the Valg and humans together, but not in like a, kept under the mountain in Morath kind of way. I don't know if any of this is making sense, but Manon does not kill Asterin. She finds out she's a Kraken witch, and she is big time on the run because obviously she tried to kill her grandmother, and all of the 13 kind of, they didn't help her with this, but they're on the run too because they're like, oh my god, if this woman is still alive, we are in trouble. So we have Manon on the run. She has an injured stomach. She has her wyvern Abraxas, and she comes into contact with one of like the Valg demons. What do they call them? The Ilkin. They're not actually creations of what happened under the mountain, is what I found out later in a different way. But Manon is on the run. That's kind of what she's going through, but her chapters have been really fun and high stakes, and I have enjoyed being interspersed because frankly, like I want to enjoy the Rowan, Aelin, like the whole gang chapters, but I'm just like not as intrigued. I feel like there's too much dialogue about things that I don't care about, too much in the way of like scheming and politics, which is normally stuff that I like, but I feel like there's so much stuff that doesn't end up mattering down the road, and I think that is what kind of keeps me from being invested in those chapters. Also kind of not super invested in the chapters with Elide and Lorcan. Obviously they've teamed up at this point. They are pretending to be husband and wife. They are part of a traveling troupe at this point, and I believe they're trying to get up north to Terrasen. I'm still not really understanding like what exactly Lorcan is trying to do. I think I just keep forgetting, to be honest. Not that it really probably matters very much, but him and Elide have teamed up. He doesn't know who Elide is, but he does know that she was kept under the mountain or in Morath or whatever. So I mean, I guess he kind of knows about her. And also the reason that Erewhon probably wants her is because we're going to like breed her under the mountain like they were going to do with the witches. So she's had a rough life, and I'm glad that she's on the run, and hopefully Daddy Lorcan can save her and like, make her his or whatever. But that's sort of where we're at the moment. Things are moving forward, but they are moving a little bit more slowly now that we've gotten to the middle point of the book, and I can definitely see honestly why I put this book down the first time that I attempted to read it. I just feel like, again, the stuff that's happening in the islands I don't care about, though I will say Aelin/Selena's introduction to Rolf, or reintroduction to Rolf, was pretty slay, shall we say. I didn't really feel like anything after that was like very interesting. Although I am invested in the whole Aelin Lysandra thing that's kind of going on. They had like a moment of sexual tension, which I found pretty alluring. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see where things go. But before I do that though, look at this. Can we just take a moment? I have 2 babies right here. I've got a Pickles and I've got a Teddy, and they're so cute. I think I'm going to read over here with them while Hayden cooks us dinner, and then I'll update you again as we continue to read. You know, things are moving slowly but surely, and I'm hoping that things pick up a little bit more and that there is action in this book. I mean, it's not going to be like the final battle, right? I think that's going to be Kingdom of Ash. However, I'm going to need something of note to happen in this book. Otherwise, I think this is going to be kind of a 3-star. I'm not hating it. It definitely is more interesting than a lot of the first couple of books in the series. I need just a little bit more. All right, so I am 417 pages in now, which means I'm like 60% into Empire of Storms, and I like how I just said that I hoped that things got a little bit more interesting, because things certainly have picked up and gotten more interesting, and honestly, I'm having a really good time. Definitely feeling more 4 stars than 3 stars, which is really exciting. I feel like this might be my favorite book so far in the series. I don't know if that's a popular or unpopular opinion. I just feel like this is very action-packed and exactly what I was needing. Basically, when Aelin is trying to get Rolf, the pirate lord or whatever, on her side and to give her basically an armada, some stuff ends up going down. He initially thinks that Aelin is bluffing when a huge Valg army comes and tries to, I guess, like invade his port city. He's like, okay, did you really plan this? She's like, no, I did not plan this at all. In fact, I don't want to help you fight because you're not giving me any people to fight with for my own battle. So like, I'm just gonna leave the city. She eventually obviously helps him instead, and she has this like big display of power that we didn't really think was possible. And she is given, after the battle, this information about the word keys and word gates that she didn't have before. Basically, Deanna, who I'm not entirely sure who that is, she essentially speaks through Aelin and says, hey, here's the answers about the word keys and the word gates. It's kind of cryptic, and when she kind of comes to, she realizes kind of what she needs to do, and that is to speak to Elena again and try to get a little bit more information. Elena, the ghost queen or whatever, gives her more information about where they need to go, and after, you know, this big battle, after some bumping and grinding on the parts of Rowan and Aelin, and I guess like a reunion sort of, or like a heartfelt moment between Aelin and Lysandra, we know that the plan in general to fight Erewhon just as he is going to be sort of foiled, because we have to go to these marshlands, I think, to a temple where Elena's father, I believe, not killed her mother, but like, I don't know, there's a lock there. They need to find the lock. They're gonna go find the lock, and it's hidden under this marshland. So that's the thing that they're doing, and they're on the ship and they're going there, and they get a crash landing from our girl Manon, who, you know, is still dealing with a stomach injury. Abraxos basically drops her in the ocean right next to the ship that Aelin and the whole crew is on, and Manon is now being kept prisoner, and I think she's going to be a bargaining ship for them. So that's super exciting. I actually do like that, and I like that we've already had more moments between Dorian and Manon. Like, I just eat it up, and definitely a different dynamic than any of the other couples in the series, which I really like. And then we have Elide and Lorcan. Now, I did kind of, I think, figure out what Lorcan wants. He's supposed to go to Marath for the queen, and I guess take down Erewhon himself or something like that. I don't know how like plausible that is. That seems like kind of a weird goal, but as he starts finding out more about Elide, he decides instead that he is going to, I guess, go with her to track down Selena/Aelin. He also lets her know, hey, Selena and Aelin are the same person, and they have this like conversation that I thought was kind of interesting about the fact that Aelin is someone who Elide maybe shouldn't like trust or shouldn't respect. He compares himself to Aelin and is basically like, okay, if you don't like me and you think I'm a dastardly person, I don't know why you think you're going to want to support this queen. Elide, I guess I didn't like fully realize what her heritage was, but she's the Duke of Parenth's niece, which we kind of already knew, but her father was murdered by the Duke of Parenth, and she is the Lady of Parenth. And I think Lorcan like wants to kidnap her, but I don't think he is going to succeed, and I think he is sort of starting to rethink his plans, and I think he wants to team up with Aelin now, which I think would be pretty neat. So overall, like, things are picking up, things are happening. I'm liking what's happening. I liked that big sort of grand fight scene, I guess you could say. I liked getting to see Lysandra turn into this like huge creature in the ocean. Yeah, I'm just excited to see where that final battle leads us in the next book. I think the only thing that's really going to happen between now and the end of this book is that they are going to find the lock. I think there's going to be some sort of challenge. I think it's going to be reminiscent of some of the things that end up happening in, is it the second book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series, where we have Farah kind of having to go on these like little quests. Like, I kind of feel like it's going to be like that. It's going to be treacherous, it's going to be challenging, and then there's going to be this big cliffhanger. I don't know, maybe there will be probably another like battle moment, but I kind of don't think that's going to happen. I just think it's going to be something like tricky when they get to these like marshlands. And I do think that Elide is going to get to Aelin as well. Good times to be had by all. Like I sort of implied, I don't love the fact that Aelin and Rowan got together in the way that they did. I just felt like it was weird to happen after a battle. I mean, I guess again, it's better that it wasn't in a war camp. I don't know that a beach setting is really where I would like want to be intimate personally. You know, what's interesting to me is that a lot of conversations are had about Sarah J. Maas's Court of Thorns and Roses series, how that one is so new adult, and I don't know how that could possibly be YA. The scene that happens in this book is very similar. I don't want to say it's in no way YA or that these things don't happen for younger age demographics, shall we say. I just think it's interesting that there's so much focus on that other series. I think maybe because there are only 3 books in that series and more people have read it. I'm not entirely sure, but like there's graphic scenes in here, so it's like you can't really say that one's bad and then this one's okay. I don't know. It's interesting. I guess I didn't expect it. I expected maybe more of a fade to black or a closed door or just makeouts. I don't know. But it wasn't any of those things. So it was a little interesting. I feel like now that they have like consummated their love, I just care about them a little bit less. Like, I mean, I guess they're well suited to each other, whatever, but I'm definitely more invested in pretty much every other couple. Even Elide and Lorcan, even Aelin and Lysandra, especially Manon and Dorian. But yeah, I'm hoping that there's like more movement in those relationships because that's what I'm here for.
Okay, please pardon Hayden's heavy breathing. He's right next to me. I'm like 77% now into Empire of Storms, and things are still heating up. I don't remember in the last clip if I told y'all that when they were on the boat going to the marshlands that they got attacked by the Ilkin, but that definitely happened. Obviously, they were able to fend off the Ilkin, and once they get to the stone marshes or whatever, they get attacked by the Ilkin again. Are we shocked? Are we surprised? I feel like we kind of should be, because I feel like that's a lot of action from Miss Sarah Janet in like a very short period of time, but I am not mad at it. I feel like it was entertaining enough to read about. We also have Elide and Lorcan making it to the stone marshes as well. So, you know, they're there and they get to see the full glory, I guess you could say, of Aelin's powers. And so I think that Lorcan is going to do anything in his power to like, I don't want to say work for her, but to get out from under the thumb of Maeve, and I think the other guys are trying to do that too, Fenris and Gavriel, so we shall see. I also think it's going to make it complicated, and I think it was kind of mentioned by Fenris, that like, they want to help Aelin, but when it comes down to it, like, they have to stay loyal to their own queen, and that makes it really challenging for Gavriel, who is Adian's father, so, you know, things are complex, things are complicated, and I'm curious to see kind of how things play out for the rest of this book. It's like, I assumed that this kind of thing would happen, that they would get attacked when they go to like find the lock in the stone marshes, but they've already done that, so I'm like, what else could possibly happen in this book at this point, because I still have 25% left.
Well, spit really hit the fan, did it not? I finished Empire of Storms last night, and I can say with a very high degree of confidence that this is easily my favorite book in the series so far. It's interesting, I went back and tried to write a review on Goodreads for this, and I guess I wrote a review the first time I attempted to read this book, and I was like really angry at it for some reason. I was like annoyed at Aelin's characterization. I thought she was like backsliding and not being, you know, the person that she has developed into, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, this is so boring. What was I thinking? Honestly, I'm not trying to say that Sarah J. Maas is like, you know, my favorite author of all time, or that she writes, you know, the most perfect fantasy books ever. But I do want to give her some credit for this series in particular, because there just really aren't that many high fantasy YA stories that are this expansive, that do as much as her books do. Like, I have to give credit where it's due. I really do think she does certain things good. And I think there are a lot of people that like to hate just to hate. And I like to think that even though I am a critical reader, I'm not someone who likes to hate just to hate, right? And again, like, I enjoyed this book. I'm gonna give it 4 stars. So let me kind of tell you what happened though, like what happened in the last part of this book and what is making this be a 4-star read for me. I feel like when we last spoke, everybody was at the stone marshes and we were kind of gearing up for what we didn't know, but we had a big Valg army basically coming and hitting up Selena/Aelin, and she had to use her powers or whatever to fight them off, and she did in spectacular fashion. And then things get even more interesting because Queen Maeve arrives at the coast of the stone marshes and they have to put together some sort of army to fight Maeve, right? In the process, Manon and Aelin decide that they are going to hop in this mirror that they thought was the lock and try to get information about the lock. That's like what the mirror's purpose was, I guess. They assumed it would be easy and they would just like go find the lock in the stone marshes, but instead they find a mirror, they jump in the mirror, and while they're there, Elena ends up telling them exactly what they have to do, why things are the way that they are, why Nehemia made the sacrifice that she made. And while it felt a little bit too info dumpy and a little bit more tell than show, I did kind of appreciate it in that particular moment. I didn't mind it so much because there hadn't been very many moments of that in the book so far. Like obviously we do have Elena throughout the book series like telling Aelin, hey, you need to do this, or this is what word marks are, or, you know, things like that. Like she definitely is kind of a guide throughout the books. Anyway, I actually liked that moment of Manon and Aelin in the mirror, and I thought it was interesting how Manon actually plays a part in the prophecy in some ways. Like she is a witch and she is like, what is it, the silver to the flame? I don't remember exactly like what her role is, but I just thought it was interesting that she played a purpose, and also that like Elide has some sort of purpose as well, even though she wasn't like in the mirror with the girls. So anyway, we get these reveals, we start to understand what exactly went down. We find out that Elena was maybe, I don't want to say just as stupid as Aelin, but she ended up locking Erewhon into the mountain of Morath, but she didn't put the word keys into the lock before she did it. So she kind of like squandered her one opportunity to use this lock. And so now Aelin has to build a new lock for these word keys so that she can send Erewhon back to where he came from and he will never return, right? He's just been like trapped basically under this mountain for a long time because he was never actually vanquished. And I think, you know, we knew this kind of in the story that like he wasn't vanquished. We're fighting him again. But yeah, getting all of the like true answers was interesting, and knowing what Aelin had to do I think was interesting as well. The part that I have some mixed feelings about at this point though is the way that this book ended. Now I do like that Aelin is kind of missing at the end of the story. I find that interesting and it definitely shakes things up. I think my issue is that we had, like I said, this kind of tell and not show moment with Nehemia and with Elena in the mirror, and I was fine with that. Like one moment of that would have been fine. I think what was annoying to me is that when Queen Maeve attacks while Aelin and Manon are in this mirror, right, and everybody else is like on these battleships and fighting Maeve's armada, whenever Aelin does come back, we have Queen Maeve kind of say why she is trying to fight them in the first place. We know, I guess at the beginning of this book, that Maeve is probably going to fight them at some point, or she's not necessarily on their side, she's not necessarily providing aid to them against Erewhon, and so we're like, why is she doing this? We don't really understand. And Maeve definitely does her like villain speech and lets us know, hey, this is why I was doing this, and I've been calculating this entire time. There's a reason that I put Rowan in your life. And you're just like, understand Sarah J Maas likes to be crafty, and I understand that she likes to act more clever than the reader sometimes, and I'm fine with that on occasion. I think having it back to back though, again with the Elena sort of like tell and then the Maeve tell, I think those were too close together. I feel like if they had been in separate books, okay, maybe I could allow it, but I felt like they were a little too close together. There has to be a certain level of chaos in a fantasy story. Like yes, there are prophecies and stuff, but like I needed that to not be the case. I didn't want Maeve to put all of her cards on the table, right? That being said, the other things that happen, like I said at the end of this book, were things I enjoyed. Aelin ends up going with Maeve to kind of save all of her friends, and the reason that she ends up going with Maeve is because she knows that if she tries to fight her, that there's a good chance that Maeve would take the 2 word keys that Aelin has, and so she, I think, gives the keys to either Manon or Elide, maybe both of them, and she goes on the ship with Maeve, never to be seen again. The ship kind of like disappears a little bit, kind of Winnow-esque. It was very interesting. And then we find out that she and Rowan are married, and the reason that they got married was because Aelin kind of saw this happening. She could definitely see that this could happen, and she wanted to make sure that her people had a king. So Rowan, I guess, is the king in her place or something. I'm not entirely sure. I liked the ending of this book. I thought it was interesting. I liked that there was so much in terms of plot and battle in this book. I feel like in the other books, there would be maybe one small, like, little skirmish, and then that would be it. Like that was the entirety of the book, and there was just a lot of like Aelin feeling sorry for herself, blah blah blah. This book didn't feel like that. You know, there are moments obviously of reflection, there are moments with Aelin's little cadre like being friendly or whatever, but for the most part this book is really action packed. It is propelling the story as a whole forward. I am, you know, kind of chomping at the bit to pick up Kingdom of Ash, which is kind of sad because I think I'm actually gonna have to pick up Tower of Dawn first. Part of me is kind of like, do I even need to read that book? Should I just skip it? I'm going to read it, don't worry. But honestly, this was a really good time, and I am sort of surprised to be saying that because, like I said, I feel like I had negative associations with this book because I did DNF it initially, and I was like, yeah, it's boring. It's not boring. This is not a boring book. Yes, there are moments. I mean, I feel like moments in every fantasy book, no matter how fast-paced, but for the most part, I do think this is a fast-paced fantasy that was like kind of fun to read. Are we shocked? Are we surprised? And I'm not a hater for once. I sort of am. But yeah, I enjoyed this book. It's a 4-star read for me, and I'm curious to see where things go. Yeah, I think the series needs a little bit more credit. I don't think it gets as much credit as it maybe should, especially in comparison to something like ACOTAR, which is a really fun, short fantasy series. But if you like fantasy and you want something a little bit more drawn out and a little bit more action-packed, like, these are fun. These are fun books, okay? But that is it. I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I'm gonna go hang out with the Pepper back here. And I will see you back here probably sometime in December with like a bonus video for Kingdom of Ash. Maybe January. Not entirely sure. But thanks so much for watching. I love you all so much. And until next time.